years did you do the Howard Stern show?
I started in 1983.
How did you get found, by the way?
I was working in a recording studio in the 70s and figured out, by osmosis how you could put out a record. And then I started telling my jokes on stage. And then I said to my girlfriend one night, I said, they laughed at every joke I said. I should make a record. She said, so make a record. So I made a record. And borrowed $100 from everybody I knew, made a record, got 1,000 copies, made another record. So by 1982, I had 3 LPs. And I was working in a place called Garvin's in Washington, D.C., and the owner told me there's a guy that's on the radio down here that just got fired that's going to WNBC in New York. You should look him up. He'd love you, because he used to do broadcasts in his underwear from my club on Friday mornings. So blindly, I just mailed my records. Howard Stern, care of WNBC. I was a hippie. I listened to the radio. Never. I listened to 1010, and, to get the news. It might have even been CBS at that point. Who knows? And I listened to cassettes of music or my own songs. I didn't know from radio, since the WNBC good guys, And he called me up. He called me up in 1983. Nancy, my girlfriend, who became my wife, said that disc jockey called up. So I called him up and he said, we're doing a show this afternoon. We're doing a contest, a talent contest over the telephone. Do you want to come in and be a judge? We love your albums. You know every joke in the world. You're a riot. So I drove into 30 Rock and went on the show and it was me and Howard and Fred and Robin and another guy who they brought in as a judge, and we just had so much fun. And at the end of the show he said, man, you got a lot of energy, you're great, why don't you come back next week? So I came back once a week for 3 years, when I was in town, when I wasn't on the road. And then in 1986 he went to mornings and put me on the show a couple days a week, and very rapidly I became a full-time cast member by August. And then from August 86 to March of 2001, I was the head writer, passing them notes and being crazy. I was the head writer of the TV show on Channel 9, the TV show that never aired on Channel 5, the CBS TV show, the E! Show. And he put out his books, his movie. It was just a slow, he just kept reinventing himself. And I was very lucky to have crossed him when I did, but I also added some fuel to the fire, so it was a nice wedding. Right. It was like Dorothy. She was on her way to Oz, but it was one of the people he picked up along the way. It was the scarecrow. It was great fun.
Yeah, but you added, like I had said, you really added to him. You added to his energy level, his fuel.
The melee.
Yeah, no, you really, because I'm a radio listener, so I was listening to those late afternoon shows, and I guess you would come on and we'd listen for you. Because we were your friends.
Very sweet.
And we, yay,
Yeah, we played Stump the Comedian, Stump the Joke Man.
Yeah, that was great. We really loved it. So then he was your, that was one of your favorite venues. It was to do that particular show, that particular writing.
It was, it was the greatest job in the world. My job was to sit in the back of the classroom and laugh and pass notes. You know what I mean?
You were good at that. You've got pictures of you doing
Dirty
that, right?
Johnny, yeah.
Yeah. From which elementary school?
My first comedy LP that, when I raised money and put out my first LP, it's the cover of the LP is my 8th grade class picture from James H. Vernon.
I remember that, and you're giving them the finger.
And I'm 8th grade sitting there, very subtly giving the finger. I still see people.
I'm so
I got Facebook friends that are, in that picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Johnny
wonderful.
Levy and, people like that. Nancy Frassinino. Nancy Frassinino was in that picture, and I took it to the Friars Club a couple of years ago, and it was the first I choked. I said, "Oh, this is my friend Nancy. I've known her for over 50 years."
Oh, I do
it's the
that,
first.
Jackie. I do that.
It was the first time I ever actually had to say I've known her for over 50 years, because we went to kindergarten together.
Oh, that's
you know what I mean? And
yeah.
I think we were both 56 at the time. I was like, I have known her for 50 years.
And that frightened you, you think?
My friend Chris Bates, that taught me to play the guitar, that you knew me from the Off-Hour Rockers, we're still very close friends. We've been friends for 58 years.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yow!
Well, I have a friend from that era who I befriended in 4th grade. So I would have been 10, it's 52 years.
It's a long time.
52 years, yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a lot about getting old. That is great. You know, a lot. You know, the funniest thing. I was up seeing my old buddy Vinny DiNapoli and his wife Terry years ago, and there's a great place called the Vermont Country Store. Everybody, it's on the way up and back. Everybody's stopped there, and they've got everything from the old days, nostalgia. You know, the bow and arrows with the rubber tips. You know, all that kind of silly stuff, and you know, and so I love looking through stores like that. It's very nostalgic, and they had all these silly things. And there was a book, and I saw this book. You might have heard of this. It's called The Joys of Getting Older.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that?
Not read it, but I've seen it, yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I picked it up, and I bought like 5 of them, and you give them to your friends because they leave them on the cocktail table because every page is blank. It's just so funny.
Oh,
it's
that's
you know, because
funny.
somebody sees it, and you can't help but pick it up, and you know.
Oh, that's very funny.
Oh God! It's
Every page is blank.
Every page is just deep.
Then I haven't seen it.
Deeply
very funny.
And it's funny. I thought because the other day I was at my friend Burf's again, and it was sitting on his table.
Oh, that's
like,
very funny.
He said it's gotten so many people. You know, you're at somebody's house, you pick something up. You know.
Now, what are your plans for the future? You were telling me you're doing a book.
I'm thinking of writing a book. Me and my ex-wife Nancy and my radio co-host. I have a show on Sirius XM satellite radio on Tuesday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on channel Howard 101. It's one of Howard's channels called Jackie's Joke Hunt, and it's an hour of jokes. We're going into our 5th year. We've done 212 shows. We're off this week.
Wow.
We pre-taped a show with Pat Cooper, who's the funniest man in the world. He's like an 82-year-old wonderful Italian comedian that's been around forever.
Oh, I know Pat Cooper. Oh, okay.
Oh, he's so great. But we've done 212 shows, and Ian and I and my ex-wife Nancy Sirianni, we did a game show called Play with Jackie, and we're trying to sell it. It's on the web, playwithjackie.com. It's like 5 different joke-related,
Right.
you know, games. It's really fun. I've got jokeland.com. I've got you know, I'm working around. I just did Cleveland House of Blues. I'm working at in Merrillville, Indiana, right outside of Chicago on April Fool's Day in a thing called the Dirty Joke Show. You know, I work Atlantic City. You know, I don't work a lot of gigs, but I still enjoy doing it. I do my radio show once a week. In the month of April, I'm doing a thing called the April Fool, and Sirius and XM. Before they merged, both had an uncensored comedy channel. And I'm one of the most requested acts on there because you can hear George Carlin and you can hear Sam Kinison.
Right.
But when they hear me, when they get out of the car, you can repeat the jokes to people. So they really they laugh at me, but they also have something, it's like doggy bag radio.
Oh, that's very cute.
And so
Very
from
cute.
5 to 7 Eastern Standard Time, 5 to 7 in the afternoon, every Wednesday, in April is going to be the April Fool, Jackie Martling, and
Oh, fabulous.
it's 2 hours of me on Raw Dog 104 and XM 150. That it's both, depending on which service you have.
Say that
It's
again
the same.
so they can hear it.
It's Raw Dog 104 on Sirius Satellite Radio and XM 150 on XM. But anybody that has the service knows where the uncensored comedy channels are.
Okay.
The uncensored comedy channel, aside from Howard Stern, are the most popular things on the service. And so I have 2 hours where it's almost like an infomercial. I play cuts from my CDs, which are just all dirty jokes, and I take phone calls, and people ask me questions and tell jokes, and I've done it about 5 times, and it's just a fun. The 2 hours flies by.
I can
It's
imagine.
great.
I have a question. Like, I remember when I was a kid, and because we're talking about people and having history, people as they've aged, people as they've developed a body of work, and how important it is to get the body of work across, and you get better after a period. It's like wine, it actually gets better. And I remember as a kid, all these comics coming out of the Catskills, out of the Borscht Belt, or they came out of those TV shows that were done live, that kind of thing. But basically out of the Borscht Belt, out of upstate New York, the Catskills, and so forth and so on. Where do you think your generation, our generation, came from? I remember my father's place with George Carlin.
You know, I think they're working in the city, but you know, some of these guys are just spawning off of the internet. You know, I know for a guy who's supposed to be in the thick of it, I know very little about comics, comedians. People say, have you heard of this guy, that guy? I don't know anybody.
Oh, the new guys, I don't know at
I
all.
have no idea. But it's always the same. You know, you get up in front of people, and then you try and get up in front of other people, and it's like wherever it can happen.
So it was,
you know, even if it's on the internet, it's a tape of somebody getting up in front of somebody somewhere. You know, it's
you have to have an audience.
It's the same animal. You know.
And you think it was clubs for you guys? Clubs?
Well, there weren't any clubs when we started. You know, Richie Minervini and me did a show at Cinnamon in Huntington in the bar upstairs, and that led to the East Side Comedy Club. And then, like a year or two later, Governor's was actually a club called Barrymore's, and they were going to shut them down because the rock and roll was too loud. And they said, "Hey, we want to do comedy." So that became Governor's Comedy Shop. So I started Governor's Comedy Shop. I started the Brokerage Comedy Club.
Oh, that's interesting.
There weren't any clubs back then.
That's
you know, and then once the clubs came, then everybody started coming out of the clubs. You know, like Rosie O'Donnell came out of the East Side, but the East Side Comedy Club came out of Cinnamon, which was it's Fast Eddie's.
Well, she was a Comac girl.
Yeah.
She grew up in Comac.
Yeah, she was part of the gang. You know?
Yeah.
So it's a whole interest. You know, it's interesting how the whole thing developed. You know,
Over a period of time.
when I was playing in the band, and I knew the band was going to break up, I started playing by myself, playing the guitar and singing my songs and telling jokes like I did in the band, but it was just me. And the guys used to, like Eddie Murphy and Bob Nelson and Rob Bartlett, Richie Minervini, Dave Hawthorne, Bob Woods, Jim Myers, we had like a core group of guys, and they would come to where I was playing. Because it was a stage with a microphone with an audience. There just weren't any. There weren't any except for Dixon's White House Inn, which was a variety show, and it was, you know, and it was.
Do you feel you influenced these people in any way?
I didn't influence anybody any more than just, you know, I provided there was a place for people to get up and work.
But they came to see you.
Well, they came to get up on stage, you know. And my audiences loved it. You know, there'd be 100 people or there'd be 10 people. You know, it might be a Tuesday, it might be a Thursday, but, you know, and then we started, you know, Rob Bartlett and I still laugh about, we worked at the Smithtown Landing Country Club in like 1978 or something, and there was a champagne bucket with a pool cue, and we taped the microphone to it.
Oh, that's very funny.
I mean, that's not a made-up story. That was something we, you know.
Oh, that's very funny.
And we'd go to work at these gigs in the middle of nowhere and get paid nothing and stop and blow the money on the way home. But those formative years were so much fun, you know. Like, I went on Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect, and before I came out, I was promoting my CD called Hot Dogs and Donuts.
Uh-huh.
And he gave it such a nice introduction. He was so nice to me. I came out and said, "Bill, that was very nice of you." He says, "Well, it's the least I can do for the guy that gave me a ride home from my first comedy gig ever."
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? Like, I go way back.
Okay,
you know,
okay.